Our ancestors were tough. They had to fight huge wild animals to survive, and meanwhile, they were hiding in caves, eating forest fruit, socializing, catching animals, and discovering new things like fire. But even with a tight schedule like this, they had some time left for hobbies and artistic things. Music was probably the thing, but we don't have evidence of that. Still, we see they were creative. There were so many caves out there where they painted with materials available back then. Researchers found caves with depictions of hunting, animals, and many handprints. To make that outline, an artist probably put one hand on the rock and then started blowing into a tube the size of a straw to spray pigment all over it. What's interesting, there were mostly outlines of the left hand, which means, even back then, the majority was right-handed. Teeth were also very important for our ancestors. They were doing most any kind of work with two hands and teeth. For instance, when cleaning the animal skin, they had to hold it between their teeth, pull it tight, and then scrape it with a stone tool. Sometimes that tool would slip a little and scratch their front teeth. Many years later, when scientists found their teeth, they looked at the direction of scratches and realized yet again that the right hand was dominant. Today, around 90% of the population are right-handed, 9% are left-handed, and 1% of people don't have a dominant hand at all. Many of the human species that walked the Earth before us were also right-handed. Scientists still haven't found a predominantly left-handed one. We share this trait with other mammals too, such as apes. They're not our ancestors, but a kind of distant relative, like different branches on the same family tree. At one point, our lineage split and we developed as separate species. Scientists believe that separation made us prefer one hand over the other. We started walking upright rather than on all fours, which freed our hands to do lots of new stuff, like making stone tools or drawing before bedtime in your cave. Our brain got a bunch of new things to coordinate, so it needed to find a way to deal with them. Either part of the brain took responsibility for different things we do. For example, the left side might have evolved to deal with that routine stuff, like foraging for food, while the right side remained free so it could react fast if something unexpected happened, like a predator was around. A similar thing can be seen in some kinds of birds, toads, and fish. They're more likely to go after the prey they see with the right eye. The brain's left part controls what we do with the right side of the brain and the other way around. Some say language also pushed us to be more right-handed. The left hemisphere of the brain is in charge of languages, and as humans developed that part, it got stronger. That's why they probably shifted responsibility to it, and our right-handedness is likely no more than a side effect. Evolution changed a lot of things in our bodies, but it's going really slow, so there are still some leftovers we don't even use anymore. For instance, the majority of people can't wiggle their ears. We have a muscle around our outer ear, but we don't do much about it. Scientists think our primate ancestors used it to move their ears in more directions. That way, they could hear where the sound was coming from, which could save them from sneaky predators. Shh! Do you hear something? After they started forming groups, they could rely on each other, so they eventually lost this feature over the years. We used to have a gene that could produce vitamin C. Imagine that, like having our own mini factory of vitamins we usually look for in fruits like oranges and lemons. But with time, our ancestors probably discovered fruits were tasty, so the evolution decided to shut down that factory and let us enjoy our new treats. Hiccups are another leftover we might even have gotten from another side of our wide family that lives in the water. Amphibians gulp air, while fish push water through their gills. The same muscle causes contractions we feel when our diaphragm goes into spasm, and that's a like that. Our ancestors also had thicker bones because they had to deal with harsh climates and other difficult conditions. Somewhere around 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, our bones became weaker and smaller because our lifestyle had become physically less demanding. Back pain has become a common issue in today's world since we cross great distances walking upright. When you add improper footwear and asphalt sidewalks, no, evolution is not moving as fast as the things our civilization creates. So our spines are not yet adapted to the modern world. Feeling angry? You don't see it, but our lips twitch when that happens. Ding ding, another leftover. When bears or wolves try to scare away their enemies, they bare their teeth. Humans used to do it too, and lip twitching is the first step of that. We mostly relate goosebumps with a great feeling we get when something exciting happens or when we're cold. It used to be more important for our species. When our hairy ancestors would feel cold, there was a reflex that would contract small muscles at the base of hair follicles. That way, their coat would stand up and trap more air so they could stay warm. That made sense back then, but we've got jackets today. Still, I don't mind occasional goosebumps when that song on the radio hits me. And the fire, too. Sure, it was something that kept ancient humans warm during long cold nights, but it really affected the evolution of our bodies. Humans started cooking food, so they consumed less dangerous bacteria that you can find in raw meat. Less raw meat, shorter digestive tracts, more energy available because of healthier food, and that got us bigger brains and taller bodies. Eating more processed food changed our teeth and jaws, too. We used to have bigger jaws because of all that hard, raw food we ate. Teeth got smaller. We even lost some. Some people never get third molars, also called wisdom teeth. Those who do develop them at the age of 18 to 25. Our ancestors would have already worn their teeth out by that age, so wisdom teeth are like a second chance to eat normally again. Smaller jaws, bigger brain. Hey, that's my motto. Can I get that on a t-shirt? That's how evolution shaped the structure of the human head. Our brain has tripled its size over time. Since humans are not that physically strong compared to some other wild animals, this might not be the biggest reason we've been able to survive harsh conditions. No big teeth, claws, thick skin, or dense fur, just us and our brain to trick the predators, climate changes, and all other unpredictable things waiting just around the corner. Our ancestors also made cool tools, starting from 2.5 million years ago, when the oldest stone tool was made. Around 17,000 years ago, they developed tools and skills for painting, sculpting, and ceramics. They were really creative. We can see that because of a wide variety of bowls, pots, and the rest of the fancy things they made. We're different from other primates because we can pull the ring and index fingers to the thumb. Our body had to adapt to use such complex tools we've been coming up for millennia. And to play video games, of course. Monkeys would probably love that. Apes use their feet just as well as they use their hands because there's this plantaris muscle in their legs. With that, animals can grip and manipulate the objects they're holding. Humans also have this muscle, but it's underdeveloped and rather useless. Almost 10% of humans are even born without it these days. Lots of people feel the urge to climb to a higher position or want to lift their feet when feeling scared or anxious. Evolutionary biologists think it's because a majority of early land mammals used to climb trees when they saw or felt a predator or some other threat, such as a natural disaster coming. Then, finally, there's this small pink piece of tissue in the corner of a human eye. That's a leftover from a third eyelid humans used to have, like something birds and reptiles still have. The purpose of it is to protect the eyes and keep them moist. Now, on average, Earth's water rises by 0.14 of an inch each year, and sometimes I feel like, getting some floaties. So, we can't help but wonder, what if we end up living underwater? We now have evidence that humans could adapt to that. The Vestigial, a group of people living in Southeast Asia, have evolved to have enlarged spleens, and the spleen is the organ that stores oxygen-rich red blood cells. When these cells are released into the bloodstream, they enable divers to hold their breath underwater for longer periods of time. This allows the Vestigial people to free dive to depths up to 230 feet. To live underwater, our bodies would have to get bigger so that we could limit heat loss. The bigger the animals, the more heat it produces. We'd also need to grow webbed fingers and toes to navigate the deep sea. Eventually, we wouldn't need to have two legs and they'd fuse together. Our eyes might also get bigger for better vision. Come to think of it, we'd end up looking like mer people. Scientists have even looked into the possibility of people being able to fly. Flying creatures have the right body size and the right metabolism for that. We'd need to have the ability to use fuel, like the food and water we consume, to produce enough energy to lift ourselves off the ground. Birds, for example, have a very high metabolism. All processes in their bodies go much faster. A hummingbird's heart can beat up to 1,200 times per minute. A human athlete's heart can only go as fast as 220 beats per minute. So, the flight seems almost impossible. There's no selective pressure on our species to grow wings and learn to fly. Plus, to do it, we'd need to be smaller, have less dense bones, and lose most of our muscle mass. We'd also have to give up on our teeth to become light enough. I ain't giving up my teeth. If our arms became wings, we wouldn't be able to do the things we needed our hands for. We'd just become clumsier visions of ourselves. I don't have that far to go. And to grow separate wings, our skeleton and muscle structure would need to radically change over millions of years. The concept of humans living on other planets of our solar system doesn't seem very far-fetched. Depending on what planet we'll end up colonizing, our features will become a lot different too. Our eyes will get larger if we reach planets at a bigger distance from the Sun than Earth. Because if there's less light, we'll need bigger eyes to see better. Our skin might also become more pigmented to help with harmful UV radiation outside of Earth's protective ozone layer. We might even get thicker eyelids and more pronounced brow bones to deal with the effects of cosmic rays. Weirdly enough, if that wasn't weird enough, we might evolve to blink sideways to better protect our eyes from cosmic debris coming from all directions, since most likely, gravity on other planets will be weaker than on Earth. Living on other planets might also mean bigger nostrils. We'll need those to breathe more easily since oxygen may be scarce in new worlds. We might get thicker and denser hair to protect our heads from potential radiation. On Mars, for example, there's on average 40 to 50 times more radiation than on Earth. We will still be able to use a lot of technology, but instead of smartwatches and glasses, we'll have smaller and more subtle gadgets. Things like communication contact lenses might appear quite soon. Instead of headphones, we might use miniature bone conduction devices implanted above the ear. Scientists don't know for sure what people will look like 1,000 years from now, but they can predict it based on previous patterns of evolution. In the Middle Ages, people had an average life expectancy of 35 years. That means they had to work really hard and produce offspring very early in their lives. These days, life expectancy has more than doubled. More and more people live to be 100 or even 110 years old. We can easily assume we'll end up living longer than that. Now, how about our size? All animals have evolved to grow larger over time. We've seen it in dinosaurs, whales, horses, and in people too. Our ancestors from 4 million years ago were small, barely reaching 4 to 5 feet tall. Most likely, we continue to gain height mostly because we have better nutrition, but also because our genes seem to be evolving too, as people who are above average in height tend to have more adventurous or useful genes based on some studies. But as we grow taller, we've also become more fragile. Over the past 2 million years, our skeletons have become lighter. We've started to use more tools for our day-to-day activities. People have also become less active ever since farming was invented, so our bones are now less dense. And because these days we spend a lot of time at our desks, our bone structure might change altogether and alter our postures. Yet, the taller body trend can't go on forever. Size cannot increase beyond a certain limit. That's because the pressure on the tissues of very large bodies is different from the pressure on bodies of medium size. If our bodies continue to grow larger, our shape will need to change too. We're also likely to see dramatic changes in our minds and personalities. The past 6 million years have roughly tripled our brain size. You might think this trend will continue, but it probably won't. Surprisingly, our brains are getting smaller. Research shows that the size of the human brain peaked about 20,000 years ago, just before the invention of farming. Then the brain started to decrease, and we're not really sure why. One explanation is that fat and proteins were hard to find once people started farming and eating more vegetables. It made it more difficult to grow and maintain large brains. Our brains also need a lot of energy. They take up around 20% of our daily energy use. Our personalities are continuing to evolve too. We don't need to be as aggressive as ancient hunters and gatherers. Our social interactions are also different. Back in the day, people couldn't travel far or communicate over long distances efficiently. So the close relationships they had were members of their own local group or tribe. Now we can travel all over the world, speak on the phone, chat on our laptops, switch jobs as often as we need to, and even date people online. It pushed us to be more outgoing, open, and tolerant. It also made us more adaptable to different cultures from around the world. There used to be 9 human species roaming Earth about 300,000 years ago. The other 8 species probably went extinct due to climate changes. It may just be us for now, but who's to say there won't be a new human species? But since we're not separated by physical distance anymore, that's unlikely. To have different species, people need to evolve in isolated groups. Genetics call the phenomenon occurring now the grand averaging. We're becoming more and more alike as generations go by. The world population is mixed. People no longer reproduce just within their location. If enough time goes by, the human race will start to look homogeneous. We'll all become the average of different physical appearances we see today. We used to have bigger jaws so that we could better chew on processed food. These days, we have smaller jaws and less room for all 32 teeth. That's why we often have those pesky wisdom teeth removed. Scientists say the number of teeth we have won't change. But if we continue to change our eating habits, switching to even softer food, our jaws will become smaller and our teeth even more crowded. So I say, let's break out the peanut brittle. Are our thumbs becoming larger? Some data suggests some teenagers have overdeveloped thumbs. That's because they play too many video games. Their thumb muscles have adapted because they've been used a lot. But this is not a genetic trait. One person may have a larger thumb, but they won't pass it on to future generations. You know, someday well into the future, we might be all thumbs. Hey, I'm there already. Humans have tails. Okay, that sounds weird, I know, but it's true. While our bodies are still forming in the womb, at around day 31 to 35, you can really start to see it. Right now, you have a tail. It's inside you. It's part of your coccyx, to be more precise. If you were to have an X-ray right now and ask the doctor to show you your tail, you'd see some small bony segments at the bottom of your spine. We lost our tails over many millennia of evolution. Imagine if we still had our tails. They'd have to redesign pants. Maybe they'd have a special hole or even a tail pocket. Sitting might be a bit uncomfortable too, to say the least. Our ancestors also had fur. We lost it about 1.2 million years ago. You might be thinking that we still have fur in the form of our body hair, but that's nothing compared to what we used to have. We were thickly furred like chimpanzees and gorillas are now because we needed it to stay warm. You might be annoyed that we lost it if you live somewhere freezing cold like Alaska. Still, you could look at it the other way. Losing our fur lets us enjoy the warm weather a bit more. Living in larger groups meant we shared stuff, and not all of it was positive. It's possible that humans with less hair or fur would get sick less often because they didn't have as many parasites on them, like lice or ticks. This might be the reason why we evolved to lose our fur and become what you see today. Although I have to admit, more body warmth would come in very handy right now. I wouldn't need to keep this blanket on my legs anymore. Oh, not again. Let me just grab a cup of water to make these hiccups go away. Ah, much better. Okay, in reality, it's not that easy to stop hiccuping. But why is it so hard to stop them? Well, it could be because of a strange feature of a past evolution. One theory is that hiccups have no real use anymore, and that we actually only do it because we come from amphibians. They had both lungs and gills at the same time. When they went underwater, the entryway or glottis to their lungs would close. Fast forward to today, and we still have that mechanism of closing the glottis, but it's useless because we don't live in the water. Wow, how unfair. If we have to get frustrated by hiccups, we should at least be able to get some use out of it. Picture this. You start getting the hiccups and it's like a superpower. You stop breathing through your lungs and start using some gills. That'd be something else, especially for anyone who really likes swimming. Most of our teeth fit pretty much perfectly in our mouth, but there are 4 of them who arrive late to the party and ruin everything. I'm talking about wisdom teeth. They serve no real purpose, but humans and a few primates have them. However, lucky species like the tamarins don't have to worry about them. About 35% of people don't even have wisdom teeth. We might be on our way to losing them altogether once and for all. No more going to the dentist on a mission to remove them, no more headaches from them either. In Ireland, there are a lot of people with red hair, like really a lot, upwards of 30%. That's a lot of redheads out there. This is a result of genetic drift. Genetic drift is when a feature is passed on from your ancestors without really having any purpose. This is exactly why some people have red hair. So, if you have red hair, there's no real reason for it, it's just your ancestors from a past age who passed on to another member of your family and eventually you. And I think red hair is incredibly fun and attractive. Inside our mother's womb, 16 weeks in, we get a powerful urge to grasp the umbilical, and so we do. Monkeys do this too, and there's a reason for it. It's because when they're out in the wild, they need to hold on to their parents' fur. Humans used to do this, but since we lost all of our fur, there's no reason for us to develop this involuntary grasping, called the palmar grasp reflex. Open wide and say, "Ah." Good, I can see your tonsils now. But what are they even used for? If we take a good look at it, they actually cause more problems than benefits. Tonsils appeared as a way to protect us from germs and other nasty stuff when we eat food. Still, more often than not, all they do is give us a horrible sore throat. Because of this, it's really common for people to get rid of them. Picture a little pouch. We have one of these inside our body. Not exactly like this, but an organ that sort of resembles a pouch, our appendix. Scientists used to think it was completely useless, but recently found that it might actually have some use. Still, like tonsils, it often causes more problems than benefits. People commonly have their appendix removed and face no real consequences, so it can't be that important. It might have helped our ancestors in the past, but issues with the appendix can be a real big stomachache. Okay, you know how some people can weirdly move their ears? Like this. I can't do it. You might be able to, though. Try it for yourself. Some of us can do this because, like other animals, we have a muscle called the auricular muscle, but it's useless for us. Cats, on the other hand, control their ears pretty well. If only we could learn from them. They look forwards and listen out for a noise behind them without moving their heads, just their ears. That's a pretty cool skill if you ask me. Stretch your arm as far as you can, your hand too. Now connect your thumb with your pinky finger. You might see a line appear on your wrist. What you're seeing is called the palmus longus, and about 90% of the world's population has it. Statistically speaking, it's likely that you have it too. Back then, our ancestors needed every bit of help they could get to climb trees and grasp things. But when we started walking, it made these muscles completely useless. Monkeys, on the other hand, still climb trees easily. They have a muscle in their feet called the plantaris muscle, also known as the monkey muscle. Now, we have this too, except we don't really need it because we don't go around doing any monkey business. Like the palmaris longus, about 10% of people are born with it. Chances are, if monkeys are hanging from a branch, that's the muscle they're using. If you're getting that late-night urge for food at 3 a.m., it's because of hunger. You probably already knew that, but what you don't know is that hunger evolved as a trigger to drive us to search for more food. So, if you still got a few extra pounds you're trying to get rid of, you know what to do. Blame it on evolution! Our hungriest ancestors would have tried harder to look for food and survived to pass that trait on to us. Our love of sugary snacks, like delicious chocolate cookies and milk, is because of evolution too. Our taste buds evolved just as hunger did to help us find food that's beneficial to us. You're out for a walk and get hit with a chilly breeze. You're only wearing a t-shirt, so you decide to go back home. You get into your house with chattering teeth and realize that you've got goosebumps too. We get this from our furry ancestors. When it was cold, they would get goosebumps and their fur would stand on end. This would trap air and insulate their bodies like a nice fluffy coat. We don't have fur anymore, so it doesn't do much. Evolution also explains why you might get goosebumps when you're scared. Picture this: you're a caveman out in the wild when suddenly a tiger jumps out at you. It starts growling at you. No worries, your hair stands on end and you look giant. The big pointy fur intimidates the tiger, so it runs off. Or you have the alternative ending, where the tiger doesn't care and eats you anyway. Maybe that's why we lost the fur, because it didn't work all the time. We don't actually need 5 toes. You're doing the laundry and your hands are full. Oh, you dropped a towel. What do? You pick it up with your feet, of course. This is possible because of our 5th toe, but we could do without it. Since we walk upright and we don't need to go around jumping from branch to branch, this toe is mostly useless. We can walk and even run just fine with 4 toes, maybe even less. So who knows, maybe in the future, humans will only have 4 toes on each foot. Now, what do you call a person who can write with either hand equally well? How can you reach with your tongue into your nose from inside? And why would you even want to do that? See further if you have a real superpower. About a third of all people can raise one eyebrow, left or right. It's a great way to send a playful signal to someone while telling a joke. But the ability to raise both eyebrows separately is much rarer. If you're not among them, that's because you cannot yet control and move the corresponding muscles. But this skill can be developed. Stand in front of a mirror, hold one eyebrow with your hand and lift the other one up and down. And then do the same with the other eyebrow. This will help you learn moving them separately. Can you sit down on the floor and get back without the help of your hands or knees? This simple challenge is called the sitting rising test. Clever name. Although scientists argue whether this test is trustworthy in telling anything about your health, you can still use it to check whether your muscles and heart are strong enough. If you're unable to get off the floor without the support of your hands or knees, maybe it's time to return to the gym. Now stretch out your hand and place a ring on the crook of your elbow, then rotate your palm. If the ring didn't fall, you're a rare person. Some say only 2% of people can do that, but that's arguable. If you can lick your elbow easily or touch your thumb to your forearm, congratulations, you're among the minority of people. But some people bring flexibility to the next level. This condition is called hypermobility. It allows rare individuals to twist their bodies into weird positions, just like a snake, putting their head between their feet, doing a back bridge, and all sorts of splits. But in some cases, hypermobility can increase sensitivity. Because such people have a larger medulla, this brain area is responsible for processing emotions. Now, 90% of people are right-handed and only 10% are left-handed. Yes, that adds up. But there's also a very small percentage of those who can use both hands equally well, including writing, drawing, and doing any tasks. Naturally ambidextrous people account for only 1% of the entire population, which is about 70 million people. If you want to check whether you're one of them, try to write the same phrase with both hands, or draw a circle first with your right and then with your left hand. If there's no difference, congrats! By the way, these exercises are very good for balancing the hemispheres of the brain, regardless of which hand is your working one. Mirror writing is another good way to awaken your neurons. Wake up, wake up! Leonardo da Vinci used to write down his thoughts in a journal from right to left. The actual purpose of his mirror writings is still unknown, but some people suggest that he just tried to prevent smudging the ink because he was left-handed. Creating a mirrored text is not an easy task for most people. Now, most people depend on weather forecasts and have to adjust their outfits depending on the season to avoid catching a cold. But not everyone. Lucky ones have learned to keep their bodies warm in any frost. These fearless heroes can walk in the cold wearing only swimming trunks and feel cozy. They can stand in the snow barefoot and even swim in a river or an ice hole. Usually, this talent doesn't come naturally. People temper their bodies for years until they get used to withstand extreme cold. Of course, they don't do it just to look cool or feel cool. Health benefits from this procedure include better blood circulation, increased concentration, and an overall sense of well-being. And how many seconds can you stand barefoot in the snow? Not many. Okay, stretch out your palms in front of you. Squeeze together all of your fingers except your thumb. Now spread the index and middle fingers and a ring finger with the little finger in different directions. Success? If so, you'd probably make a wonderful musician because the nerves in your palms are well developed. Do you feel ticklish when you tickle yourself? Now, normally you wouldn't unless someone else tickles you. It happens because the cerebellum area of the brain, which monitors movements, predicts the sensations caused by your own movements. Then it sends a signal to other parts of the nervous system to cancel these sensations. But some rare individuals can actually feel ticklish on their own. If you're not among them, touching a new texture that the brain doesn't yet recognize or using a scalp massager can help to excite your nerves and bring relaxation. Okay, grab a sheet of paper and something to write with and sit on a chair. Stretch one leg and rotate your foot clockwise. Try to draw the number 6 on the paper or in the air while still rotating your foot. This task is so much struggle because the left area of your brain can't handle two opposite rotations at the same time. That's why the brain tries to bring all movements in the same direction. Only a few people can manage it from the first attempt. You can also try to write other numbers and watch the funny results. Seems like the foot has no problem only with 0. If you want to check out the work of your vestibular system, try this simple trick. Stand on one foot and close your eyes. Most people lose balance at least during the first attempt. Your vestibular system includes many organs and systems throughout the body. Together, they allow your body to stay in balance in different positions. This system includes the inner ear and vision, which is why keeping balance is much easier in silence while your eyes are open. Every day, people use their tongue to recognize different tastes and communicate with each other. But it's also a great tool for a bunch of tricks. Around 10% of people can touch the tip of their nose with their tongue. The current title of the world's longest tongue belongs to Nick Stobel from the USA. His tongue measures 3.97 inches, according to Guinness World Records. There's also another contender whose name is in the Indian Book of Records for the tongue measuring a whopping 10.8 inches. Wow, imagine what he can do to an ice cream cone. But the average adult male tongue is only about 3.3 inches long, and the average female tongue is 3.1 inches. That's why most people can't perform the nose trick that easily. Okay, tying a cherry stem in a knot is a popular party challenge, but only a few people can do it right and quickly. Al Glinaetsky set the World Guinness record in June 2014 when he made 14 cherry stem knots in 1 minute using only his tongue. Wow. If you want to try to beat his record, practice with patience and pick longer stems around 1.5 inches long. Plenty of tutorials on this topic at your service. Stand in front of a mirror, open your mouth, and try to roll the sides of your tongue up towards each other to make a U shape. About 65 to 81% of people are natural tongue rollers, and the majority are women. Some believe it's a genetic capability, but recent studies show that people can actually develop this skill by practicing. Khichri mudra is a term from yoga that means curling the tip of your tongue back into the mouth. Ideally, it should reach above the soft palate and rest in the beginning of the nasal cavity. This asana helps refresh the mind and body and overcome thirst, hunger, and anxiety. Some say it also helps to become a professional lucid dreamer if you acquire a habit to fall asleep with Khichri mudra every night. But most yoga beginners spend months and even years to reach into the nasal cavity. And if you can do it right away, you're the lucky one. Can you wiggle your ears intentionally? Congratulations! Around 22% of people on the earth are capable of wiggling one ear. As for moving both ears at once, only 18% can do that. Ear wiggling used to be a common thing for our distant ancestors. Scientists believe they could perform a variety of movements with their ears. The group of muscles responsible for wiggling is called the auriculars, and we mostly don't need it today. But some people claim that everyone can learn to move their ears. It only takes time and practice. Unfortunately, we still cannot acquire this classy habit of twitching an ear toward a sound source as dogs and cats do. Whenever we yawn, we use the muscles in our mouth and tongue, and the contact can squeeze some of the saliva-producing glands. As a result, we might squirt a tiny stream of saliva without even noticing it, but it'll reach out a foot or more. I had a friend in college who could do that at will. It was impressive. It turns out that saliva is basically filtered blood. Blood is processed thanks to special glands, and special cells absorb its properties. After that, the blood becomes saliva. Moving on, if your brain were a USB drive, it would be totally insane. Our brain capacity is somewhere between 10 and 100 terabytes. Some scientists claim the full spectrum can reach 2.5 petabytes. Sounds like a dog snack, doesn't it? When the size of the full English version of Wikipedia was calculated back in 2010, it was only 5.6 terabytes. Our body heat can boil a half a gallon of water in 30 minutes, even when we're idle. Yeah, we should try that. Our brain can perform up to 10 quadrillion operations per second with 10 watts of power only. A computer that could do the same would need about 1 gigawatt of power. This amount could power up to 300,000 houses. Your memory is affected by your body position. For example, you're much more likely to recall a situation where you wave to someone if you stand and wave again. Your brain has millions of neurons. They're all different, and the speed of connection between them is different too. That's why you can recall some information faster than others. Our nerve impulses, though, are super slow compared to the speed of electricity. Neurons can speed up to 275 miles per hour, even slower than the world's fastest car. Still, it's pretty fast because your brain needs to respond to stuff like pain or tickles. The brain itself, by the way, can't feel pain. It has no nerve endings of its own. People with red-colored hair are 1% of all people. 2% are natural blondes. So yeah, most people you see with these hair colors have dyed hair. Black is the most common hair color in the world. Hair is not only strong but also elastic. It can stretch about 30% of its length when it's wet. The average hair growth rate is 6 inches per year. So if you never cut your hair until you're, say, 80 years old, your hair will have grown up to 480 inches, about the height of a 4-story building. Still, it's not quite possible because our hair length is programmed genetically. A human eye resembles a car engine. Both of them need liquid for good lubrication. The engine needs oil and the eye needs tears. To make sure the eyes work right, tears are distributed all over them. That's why we blink more than 10,000 times a day. The eye muscle is the fastest muscle in our bodies. We can blink 5 times per second and even more. We spend about 6 seconds blinking every minute. During the day, we spend 30 minutes in complete darkness just because we close the eyes, not even including the time when we sleep. The only part of the human body that doesn't get any nutrients from blood is the cornea of the eye. The only thing it needs to work well are tears and fluid in front of your eyes. Most scientists agree that tears that appear out of emotion are a unique human feature. No other animal is capable of crying because of sadness or joy. The pupils narrow and expand in order to control the incoming light. If there's a lot of light, they narrow the passage for light so as to not harm the vision. In the dark, the pupils expand to capture as much light as possible. Now, back to our mouths. The tongue has a lot of muscles, and some of them constrain only when you're learning a new language. A human bite almost always becomes infected because of all the bacteria that live in our mouth. In this sense, we're quite close to hyenas. Your bones are designed to be used a lot daily, and some of them can absorb 2 or even 3 times your body weight. That's impressive, but your teeth are even stronger. When you bite something, the teeth can exert incredible pressure, up to 200 pounds. By the way, the enamel is considered to be a part of your skeletal system. Our body is about 60% water, and it can be found even in bones. About 25% of the human bone mass is made of water. Hydrochloric acid in our stomach, also known as the most important defender of the immune system, helps get rid of dangerous food toxins, viruses, and bacteria you get with the food you eat. Even the stomach itself can be digested by this acid, but the mucous membrane protects it. Even if you brush your teeth twice a day and never forget about mouthwash, your mouth still stays one of the dirtiest parts of the human body. Ew. Millions of bacteria live inside it. The good news is that most of these bacteria are good for the body and protect it from bad bacteria and viruses. People and giraffes have similar necks. A person has the same amount of neck vertebrae as a giraffe has. The difference, though, is about the length. Giraffe vertebrae are about 10 inches long. Our spine can withstand pressure of up to 1,000 pounds. It would withstand an adult zebra. But please don't try it at home. There are no zebras there after all. When you lie down on your back and elevate the knees, the pressure on your spine is about 25 pounds. Not a zebra for sure, but a good-sized cat. Our spine is also very flexible. If we could bend it, it could possibly form 2/3 of a complete circle. Are we like snakes then? In the morning, you're taller than in the evening. While sleeping, you're no longer affected by the force of gravity, and your spine stretches, giving you up to half an inch in height. Too bad you become shorter by daytime, though. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. So when you feel like your stomach's falling down, it's actually flipping inside your body. You think your fingerprints are the only unique thing in your body? Well, they're not. Your tongue print and your smell are also one of a kind. If anyone sniffs you, it's reason enough to get suspicious. If all of your blood vessels were stretched into a single line, boy, that would hurt. But it would go around the Earth more than twice. An impressive feat that you wouldn't see because, well, you can't live without your blood vessels. You think you rest while you're asleep, but in fact, your brain doesn't. It's actually more active at night than during the day, processing all the info you've collected. So, have some respect. The human liver is the busiest organ of the body. It has over 500 functions, and not all of them are even clear to the scientists. Ever wonder why you feel so sleepy after lunch? Well, that's because of your circadian rhythms, which have 24-hour cycles, demand you have a nap after 7 hours of being awake, and food just adds to this effect. Simple. Toothache and headache are linked together thanks to the trigeminal nerve. It goes through the jaw right to the head, so when you feel tooth pain, it usually goes hand in hand with that in your head. You lose calories doing literally anything. A healthy 8-hour sleep, for example, makes you lose up to 800 calories. And yes, you spend energy even while eating. Like all mammals, we have a diving reflex that slows down or even stops some bodily functions to keep us from drowning. That refers to heart rate too. A person can go without food for more than 20 days. However, if you don't sleep for 10 days, your body will simply stop functioning. Talking about sleep, the average person forgets 90% of their dreams. And maybe that's a good thing. Otherwise, imagine how crazy the world would have been. The color of your dreams is affected by the TV you watched as a kid. If you're of an older generation that watched black and white TV, you'll see monochrome dreams more often than not. If you're used to color television, your dreams will also be colorful. Out of every 10,000 people on Earth, one person has their organs mirrored or reversed from their usual and customary positions. That is, their liver would be larger on the left side, and the right kidney would be a bit superior to the left one. Speaking of kidneys, your left one is a bit more elevated than your right. That's because the liver is larger on the right side of your body. People with light-colored eyes, blue or green, are better at tolerating pain than those with dark eyes. Scientists think it might be related to melanin that affects the color of the eyes. The length of your foot is similar to that of your forearm. Don't believe me? Go check. I'll wait right here. Nah.
The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside, and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are two types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect, since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods, which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot. It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work, and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. The human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sink. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. People are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so... Join us on the bright side of life and laugh away.
Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, But some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture, so an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Yeah, try that and leave me a comment on how that goes. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on 2 legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a 3rd leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live. But we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means, if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. Hey, you can actually masticate with your mandible, another word for chewing. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than a tenth of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see? So get this, if someone managed to uncoil all the DNA in the human body, it would stretch out to around 10 billion miles. Hey, do the math. That's twice the distance from Earth to Pluto. And that's not the only awesome thing our body is capable of. Trillions of nerve connections are powering your memory nonstop. According to studies, after looking at 2,500 images for a mere 3 seconds, most people can recall if they have seen these pictures with 92% accuracy. Wow! Your body glows, emitting tiny amounts of barely visible light. This glow is the product of biochemical reactions going on inside your organism. The light waxes and wanes throughout the day, but even though it is visible, you can't detect it with the unaided eye. From 1 to 6 pounds of your body weight is made up of bacteria, and from 100 million to 1 billion bacteria can live on just one tooth in your mouth. So please brush. It's impossible to taste your food without saliva. all because the chemicals in your food must be dissolved in saliva before they get detected by your taste buds. Even though it sounds like a myth, eating too many carrots can indeed turn your skin orange. Carrots have high amounts of beta-carotene. That's a compound that can cause carotenemia. If you have too much of this compound in your bloodstream, it'll hold on to parts of your body with thicker skin. I'm talking about the soles of your feet, your knees, elbows, palms, and even certain areas around your nose. But worry not, this condition is not dangerous. You can easily reverse it by decreasing the amount of beta-carotene-filled foods you consume. The chin muscles, scientifically known as the mentalis muscles, look pretty quirky, giving us mixed feelings. Just look at these creepy tiny tentacles. And still, they make it possible for us to create all kinds of facial expressions that involve the lips, chin, and cheeks. And yes, they are the culprits behind those weird wrinkles and crevices on the skin of your chinny chin chin. All because these muscles don't pull on themselves, but yank on the skin. Now, people can live without some organs, leading a normal life. The human body consists of singular organs and those that come in pairs. And speaking of the latter, you only need one of those to survive. Your small intestine is actually not so small. It's taller than you, measuring around 23 feet. Now, the cornea, that transparent front cover on your eyes, doesn't have any blood supply. Instead, it receives oxygen directly from the air. Human beings develop their unique fingerprints very early in life, while they're still embryos, just 3 months after being conceived. By the way, even if fingerprints get badly damaged, they tend to grow back to their original pattern. All people are born with a diving reflex. It can get activated and shut bodily functions if one is drowning or is submerged in the water. The human brain is by no means smooth, but if you decided to flatten all those wrinkles covering it, the brain would be the size of a pillowcase, but not as useful. Newborn babies only blink once or twice in a minute. For comparison, a grown-up person blinks at least 10 times within the same time. Our lungs are the only organs that can float on the water, all because they're made up of around 300 million balloon-like structures called alveoli. Also, even if we're perfectly healthy, our lungs are never completely germ-free or sterile. Your nose is a superhero. It's your very own heater, filter, and humidifier. This organ is lined with tiny bone-like shells called turbinates. They contain blood vessels capable of heating the air and goblet cells that can help humidify the air. Also, the air you breathe gets filtered in your nose before going further to your lungs. Now, every time you eat something, your esophagus, the organ your food travels through to reach the stomach, moves in a series of wave-like contractions, pushing the food forward. This is known as peristalsis. There's a bond between your digestive system and your brain, the gut-brain axis. This is why stress or brain issues can affect the way your body digests food. Now, even though hiccups are typically harmless and resolve by themselves after a couple of minutes, they aren't exactly pleasant. So you should probably know that they might occur because of changes in temperature. The density of your brain increases throughout your whole life, all because new neural connections pop up. They appear because the structure of the brain keeps changing too. If you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. Very quickly, it puts the brake on all those other processes, including the sneezing reflex. By the way, studies have found that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the inside of your nose. They're called cilia. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side, and vice versa. If you're in some loud place, for example in a club or at a concert, close your ears to better hear your friends. Push the tragus, which is that pointy skin-covered cartilage in front of the ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. On average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels. That's as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes, the noise level can reach 80 decibels. That's as loud as a working food blender. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's the rubber-like stuff surrounding your joints. Scientists have recently discovered that cartilage could repair itself. This process is likely to be the most effective at the ankle, not that effective in the knee, and the least effective in the hip. Now, if a person has anosmia, which is also called smell blindness, they don't distinguish and detect smells. Your eyes never stop moving while taking in visual information. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture. These movements go unnoticed because your brain is a great video editor. It stabilizes the images and connects tons of fragments into one smooth video. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. Even if it's a mere 25% of the original liver weight, the organ can get back to its full size. Your mouth burns when you're snacking on pineapple because while you're eating this fruit, it's eating you back. Well, kind of. Pineapple is the only known food that contains bromelain. That's an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Luckily, your stomach acid knows how to deal with the offending enzyme. Now, we also have bacteria that can produce electricity living in our intestines. These bacteria give off electrons, which creates tiny electrical currents. This might be the bacteria's way to generate energy. Déjà vu might
Actually be something like a brain processing lag.
There's a theory claiming that it might happen when your brain is moving information from one part to another. If there's even the tiniest delay in that process, your brain will get the same information twice. In this case, it'll process it as an event that happened before. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. On average, such people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. No more than 5% of the world's population has this feature. Your ears might pop or even hurt when you're on an airplane. You can solve this problem by simply chewing some gum. This opens up your eustachian tube. That's a small passage that connects your throat and your middle ear. Opening this passage helps equalize the pressure in your ears and puts an end to the popping. You can also yawn to open up the eustachian tubes. Your feet are likely to become bigger with time, just like your nose and your ears. You see, when people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter, and the feet become wider and longer. Okay, yes, it's possible to rotate your eyes, but you can't do it without some practice. Our eyes have 4 major muscles that allow them to move up and down and side to side. There are actually 2 more muscles that we use without knowing as well. These muscles help you roll or rotate your eyes. We can focus on something rotating, and our eyes will start rotating with it. This helps us have a stable image and keep a clear vision, like an autofocus on a camera. When you move your head side to side and up and down, your eyes will move in the opposite direction. The average human eye has 3 cones, which lets us see red, green, and blue spectrums of light. All combined, this gives us the ability to see around 1 million different colors. Tetrachromats see the ultraviolet shades as well, as they've got 4 cones in their eyes. Pause here to quickly test how many colors you can count. There were 39 colors there. If you counted a lot, you might be a tetrachromat. Some animals, like bats and dolphins, can see using echolocation. There are also humans that can do something similar called flash sonar. They can use clicking sounds to make a 3D image of an area in their minds, allowing them to easily navigate through it. The more they click, the more flashes they get about a room or an area, giving them a better understanding of the place. Being pitch perfect is astonishingly rare. Less than 1 in 10,000 people have it. It allows people to accurately identify musical notes of all kinds. One of the many advantages of this talent is that it allows people to listen to a song and immediately know what key it's in. Hey, without music, life would be flat. People with dystichiasis are born with a second set of eyelashes that grow from the inner layer of the eyelid. While it may look pretty to some, these extra lashes can irritate the eye and cause problems like sensitivity to light, droopy eyelids, tearing, and inflammation. There are a few ways to treat the condition, like soft contacts, lasers, and cryotherapy. Dutch health guru Wim Hof claims that his breathing, meditation, and training have helped him gain all kinds of superhuman abilities. He's trained his body to adapt to extreme temperatures and even learned how to raise his own body temperature. He's also been able to adapt more quickly to altitude changes. He has even claimed that his training methods and strict diet and exercise regimen have improved his immune system. Now, we're meant to get anywhere from 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night to function the next day. But there are some lucky people out there that only need 6 hours or less a night. This is caused by a genetic anomaly, and there don't seem to be any adverse effects from having it. We have about 10,000 taste buds, but some people have many more than that – super tasters. Thanks to their powerful ability to taste sweet things like oranges, strawberries, and candy are almost too sweet, while bitter things like broccoli, cabbage, spinach, grapefruit, and coffee are overpowering. Well, thanks anyway, but I'll keep what I have. Most people have a total of 24 ribs. No, not at the restaurant. In your body. There's a chance you might be one of the few that has 25 ribs instead. About 1 in 200 people have a cervical rib, a spare rib just above the first rib. It's usually not even noticed because it's above the collarbone and pretty thin. Hey, when's lunch? I got hungry for some reason. Chances are you have an innie belly button. That's because only about 10% of the world's population have an outie, making it pretty rare. It has nothing to do with how our umbilical cord is cut. Our belly button stores a bit of fat beneath it, and it's this that determines what kind of belly button you'll end up with. So don't blame the doctor. The type you have is completely down to genetics. If you've ever experienced high altitude, you should know how hard it is on your body. Even just walking up a hill can be a difficult task. Give it a few days though and things will become easier. Your lungs, blood cells, and body will adapt quicker than you think, letting you hold on to that precious oxygen for longer. This adaptation will last for as long as you stay up high, and you'll go back to normal after a while back at normal altitude. When we submerge ourselves in water, it causes our heart rate to drop and oxygen consumption to slow. In recent years, freedivers have pushed the limits of human lungs by going down a record of 700 feet. One person held his breath for more than 22 minutes underwater. We don't know what the limits are yet, but people are testing the boundaries. When a person has a photographic memory or total recall, this is called eidetic memory. It's the ability to accurately recall sounds, images, or other things from your memory. Some can even be told a date in a calendar from years ago and tell you what day it actually was. Unfortunately, you can't get an eidetic memory with practice. You have to be born with it. An ultra-marathon runner named Dean Karnazes once ran for 350 consecutive miles and didn't even sleep for 3 days. He's most famous for running 50 marathons in all 50 U.S. states in 50 consecutive days. He finished this achievement off by completing the New York Marathon in only 3 hours. Some people have an incredible ability to find their way without using a compass or even the stars. This unique navigational ability has been linked to the strength of the signals given off in a certain part of the brain called the entorhinal region. Place the back of your wrist and forearm on a table, then squeeze your thumb and pinky together. Do you see a muscle raise up in the middle of your forearm? If you don't worry, it's vestigial. That means that it doesn't do anything useful anymore. Hey wait, that's me. It's an old muscle that we used to use for climbing, and around 10% of the human population doesn't even have it anymore. If you can wiggle your ears, you can thank your auricular muscles. Those are the ones on the outside of your ear. Even if you can't wiggle your ears, the muscles are still there. Compared to other mammals, our ears can't move much. Some mammals can even fully turn their ears to locate sounds. Just watch your dog or cat. A dog's third eyelid might be a bit creepy the first time you see it, but we also have a third eyelid of sorts. But this human body part can't move by itself. It just covers a tiny part of the inside corner of your eye. It's likely that it used to serve a purpose, but it's pretty much useless now. Sometimes you just need a really good cry. It's also good for you too. Shedding tears when you cry helps release your stress hormones. It can also stimulate the production of endorphins as well, our body's natural answer to aspirin. Your brain replaces itself every 2 months, your liver every 6 weeks, your epidermis or just skin every month. Even your stomach lining replaces itself every few days. If your body didn't do this, the acids inside of your stomach wouldn't just digest food, they'd also start digesting you. So, alright, what's eating you? Oh, you. The human lungs contain around 1,500 miles of airways and a total surface area of about 754 square feet when laid flat. But I would suggest that you don't do that. Your lungs are on the clock 24/7, keeping you alive and breathing, taking 12 to 15 breaths a minute or about 17,000 a day. Your left lung is slightly smaller than your right lung to make room for your big heart. After years of wear and tear, your feet may weaken enough that they seem to grow. This can cause our arches to flatten, meaning broader and longer feet eventually. It won't happen to everyone, but people who get swollen feet or ankles are more prone. If it does happen to you, you've got time. By age 70 or 80, your feet would have only gone up one size. Taste is influenced a lot by the temperature of what you're eating or drinking. For example, hot coffee seems less bitter and tastes much better because the heat tricks our bitter-detecting taste buds. The same goes for cold coffee, too. The cold masks the bitterness flavor and creates a more pleasant aftertaste. Room temperature coffee doesn't smell the same or taste nice because the bitterness comes on more strongly. Brushing your teeth too aggressively is very possible, and it's not good for your teeth at all. It'll wear down the enamel and make them sensitive to hot and cold foods. Teeth don't repair themselves, so you gotta take care of them. Slow down your brushing and take a full 2 minutes to get your teeth properly clean. Don't forget the floss, too. Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture. So an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on 2 legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a 3rd leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than a tenth of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see? Now, nobody really knows why we need the appendix, but it's always at the back of the book. Wait, wrong appendix. Some researchers claim the human appendix helped our ancestors process the tree bark and whatever they were eating at that time. As we have a way more balanced diet now, the appendix can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. Another purposeless thing in our bodies is the wisdom teeth. Yeah, they used to come in handy when dentists didn't exist, but now we can ideally make do without them. Your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it's thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that microgravity prevents this, resulting in fluid accumulation in the brain and skull. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at age 30, and it starts shrinking at 40. It happens to everyone, so you just have to go with it and keep your brain busy and nimble. If you stare into your eyes in the mirror, you'll see a small pink circle settled in the corner of your eye. This is your third eyelid, useless for us but valuable for animals, like birds, to keep dust and scattered debris from getting into their eyes. This might sound familiar to you if you've heard of natural selection. In short, natural selection keeps body parts throughout generations, but some of them are harmful, so they're phased out in the next generation, and others that aren't staying, just like the third eyelid. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. It works vice versa too. When you rest at night, your bones kind of relax too, so you wake up taller than when you went to bed last night. Our ears help us keep the balance, so hearing isn't their only duty. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors that look somewhat like hairs, helping you keep your balance. As for hairs, only a few body parts aren't covered with them. These are palms, the soles of the feet, and lips. Hairs grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Mine does a great job. And not only lint, our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even some bacteria typical for polar ice caps. See, you have a whole naval expedition going on and didn't even know it. Only about 43% of you is you. You're over 50% tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut and other body parts without ever leaving it. Still, even though your cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. With this in mind, your genes are less than half of what you consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. If you sleep, and I recommend that you do, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take time. One thing that indeed rests while you're sleeping is your nose. You won't smell anything nasty in your sleep. The thing is that your sense of smell deactivates at night. If there's some terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish around 10,000 smells. Nope. Recent research showed that people could indicate more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and odors can even evoke some distant memories. Meanwhile, our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Now, you don't mind if I call you a mammal, do you? Well, among us mammals, only humans can always walk on two hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You may want to say that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mainly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa, when there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our lifespan. For example, if you move from the plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you drive from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will change pigmentation slightly to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. If we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. But we'd be a huge mass of wrinkles by then. Body fat acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect those organs from serious damage. Your skull isn't a single bone. It consists of 22 different bones, many of which are fused to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called the stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the primary muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelids opening. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. So, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than a tenth of a second. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. Your stomach has an impressive capacity, holding up to a half a gallon of liquids, a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can squeeze into your stomach, since the food is processed with your teeth before it gets down there. There's not enough room for a whole turkey, but who knows, probably a good-sized chicken might fit it. And hey, like my grandmother said, there's always room for ice cream. Now, show me where your stomach with all that cola, chicken, and ice cream is. If you're pointing at your tummy, nope, it's up there, hidden in between your ribs. Your tummy is full of intestines.
You may have this rare body feature already and not know about it, since sometimes even an X-ray can't spot it. Most of us have 12 pairs of rib bones, which means we were born with 24 ribs. There are some folks, though, that actually have 25 ribs. Only 1 in 200 people have this rare extra feature, and it's called a cervical rib. It generally appears above the first rib, right at the base of the neck and above the collarbone. It's nothing to worry about, though. Most of the time, they're unnoticeable, and if ever painful, they can be safely removed. Do you know how huskies can sometimes have their eyes in different colors? Some people come equipped with this rare feature too. The medical term for it is heterochromia. The name comes from the ancient Greek word heteros, which translates to different, and chroma, which means color. People with this condition can either have complete, central, or partial heterochromia. The complete type means that the person has two completely different colored eyes, say one brown and one green. Two different colors in the same eye are what specialists call central heterochromia. A person with a partial heterochromia has just a portion of their eye of a different color. You can either be born with this condition or get it, say after an injury. Still, it's extremely rare. Less than 200,000 people are diagnosed with it in the US. Either way, let's face it, it does look pretty cool. Speaking of eye color, want to try guessing what the rarest one is? I'll spare you the Google search. It's gray. Blue eyes may have been your first thought, and they are indeed already pretty rare. Only around 8 to 17% of the world's population have this eye color. When it comes to gray eyes, though, they're even more special. Less than 1% of people have them. This rare body feature is caused by a lower level of melanin in the eye's layers. If you're interested in meeting someone with gray eyes, your best chance is in Eastern and Northern Europe. Even rarer eye colors are red or violet, but these can sometimes be the result of different health conditions. There are people out there who have the superpower of seeing 100 million different colors without the help of any fancy gadgets. We see colors thanks to some cells in our eyes named cones. Most of us have 3 types of cones to help translate what we see into the colors that our brain is able to understand. However, specialists think that there's a small group of people called tetrachromats who have 4 types of these cones. So far, researchers have only been able to identify women with this condition. That little teardrop-shaped ball hanging in the back of your neck, you know, the one that helps with swallowing your food, is called a uvula. The name comes from Latin and translates to little grape. Surprisingly enough, around 2% of people are born with a bifid uvula, which means that this indispensable organ in them is either split or forked. You sure can surprise others with this cool feature of yours at parties. Joking aside though, people with this bifid uvula may sometimes have trouble eating, drinking, and speaking. They might also have issues with digesting food. Their speech may also sound a bit unusual, but this depends on how much the uvula is split. This particular body feature might not be the perfect trait when going on vacation, but it does allow people to do more with less sleep. They say that famous people like Nikola Tesla, Margaret Thatcher, and Winston Churchill had this super rare feature. This gene, called the DEC2 gene, helps with regulating our circadian rhythms. Those are the natural biological clocks that let us know when we should be sleeping or eating by making us sleepy or hungry. A person with this rare mutation can basically go through a normal sleep cycle in less time. They can feel rested even if they slept for only 4 to 5 hours. That's one superpower I definitely want to have. How about a gene mutation that gives you superhero-like bones? They're basically unbreakable. It also makes your skin less prone to aging. Yep, looks like with this feature, you can walk away from accidents unharmed and even withstand the flow of time. Some other people out there come with a very attractive feature, but it can go unnoticed, at least at first glance. They have a little something called dystichiasis, which basically means an extra row of eyelashes. Just in case you're wondering about the medical aspects too, it results from a genetic mutation of a certain gene. As beautiful as it may sound, people with that extra eyelash layer can experience some pretty unpleasant sensations in their eyes, and, in some cases, even have problems with their vision. If spun glass hair doesn't ring a bell, know that it is, in fact, a condition you might have. I know it's pretty self-explanatory, but just FYI, it causes frizzy and dry hair. It's basically so unmanageable that you literally can't comb it. It also tends to grow out from the scalp in all directions. As for coloring, it comes in either bright blonde or silver. Most of us have hair strands that are cylindrical. People with this condition have triangular or heart-shaped strands, or even flat altogether. It's extremely rare, with only 100 confirmed cases, but it does become more manageable with age. Most of us humans have evolved to have some specific traits depending on the area of the globe that we live in. But there is a group of people, specifically those that live in higher altitudes, that developed some pretty cool traits. Let me explain. High-altitude environments come with less oxygen. Not only do these people survive in these locations, but they've adapted to actually thrive out there. For example, those living in the Andes Mountains of South America have red blood cells that can carry much more oxygen. It makes their overall circulatory system a lot more efficient. People living in similar conditions in other parts of the world have also adapted in their own way. They're able to take more breaths so that they can properly supply their bodies with oxygen. This one is very important when it comes to looks, but means little in terms of a person's overall health. I'm talking about pagebaldism. Those who have it lack melanocytes, those cells that produce hair pigment in some parts of their hair. It's most common above the forehead, in front of their hairline, but it can also appear on the eyebrows or eyelashes. Folks who have it are born with this condition and carry it throughout their entire lifetime. If you really want to get rid of it, there's always hair dye available, but I personally think it looks super cool. We all know cilantro really isn't everyone's cup of tea. I don't know about you, but it tastes like soap to me. It turns out it's not actually a preference, but rather a gene that causes the plant to have this vile taste instead. A study performed on a group of about 30,000 people revealed that you can find a particular gene variant in people who say that cilantro tastes soapy. This gene has more to do with the odor of the plant than the taste itself. If you're one of those people but really want to give cilantro a chance, either way, there's a small trick you can try. Or ask the people that cook the meals in your household. You can always crush the herb before using it in dishes. Why does that help? Well, because with crushing, the chemicals that are responsible for the soapy taste are broken down and are less likely to taste unpleasant.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, They thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running. So that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch. And your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus, for food and liquid, and the trachea, for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food, but occasionally it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough. Most people are sure that humans only have 5 senses, but that's not entirely true. Taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing aren't the only ones we have. Scientists claim that people have between 9 and 20 senses in total. These include thermoception, the sense of warmth, equilibrioception, the sense of balance. There's also the sense of time, although not everyone seems to have that last one. We used to think that there were just 8 different blood types, but in reality, there are over 30 known blood group systems. Here on the bright side, our favorite blood group is B positive. Get it? For every pound of fat you gain, you generate 1 mile of new blood vessels to supply oxygen and nutrients to your body. Your stomach produces a new lining every 6 days to avoid digesting itself. Nerve cells transmit 1,000 nerve impulses a second. They travel between 1 and 268 miles per hour. Our DNA contains 100,000 viruses. Scientists have discovered one that goes back 100 million years. Your body emits visible light. You're the brightest at 4 p.m., and your glow is the least visible at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Sweat is mostly water mixed with proteins, sugars, ammonia, and a lot of other stuff. It even contains tiny amounts of trace metals like copper, zinc, nickel, iron, and so on. What makes sweat taste salty is the sodium it contains. Plus, the more salt you eat, the saltier your sweat is. Your body's trying to get rid of the excess, and the fastest way is to sweat it out. If you walked 2 miles per hour, you'd have to walk for 20 hours straight to lose 1 pound. And it would take you 518 days and 8 hours to circle the equator. Earwax isn't actually wax. It contains fat, skin cells, sweat, and dirt. Your brain gets 3 times bigger over the first year of life and reaches its full maturity when you're 25. 60% of it is fat. Your brain generates around 23 watts of electrical power, which is enough to run a small light bulb. Humans can't really multitask. Your brain can't perform more than 1 action at the same time. It switches between them, which doesn't save time as you might think, but increases the possibility you'll do something wrong and makes the process longer. When you have an exam to take, or you're at work trying to focus on an important task, try chewing gum. Research showed it can help you stay concentrated for longer on tasks that require your full attention. Studies even say that it's a better test aid than caffeine. There's nothing special in the gum, but the act of chewing wakes your brain up. The effect doesn't last long though, just for 20 minutes. Embryos develop fingerprints at 3 months. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Sunburn is the result of radiation exposure. When your body's natural defense mechanism gets overwhelmed trying to fight UV rays, a toxic reaction occurs that results in sunburn. Goosebumps are an evolutionary reflex left over from our ancestors. The release of adrenaline made their hair stand up, and they look scarier to approaching predators. Your body produces 1 to 3 pints of saliva every day. It helps you digest food and fights off infections. You also have a lot of bacteria in your mouth. Yeah, that's right. The average amount of bacteria in a person's mouth is almost the same as the number of people living on Earth. That's hard to digest. Each human has roughly 150,000 hairs on their head. Every strand grows around 1/2 an inch per month. If we added the growth from each hair, It would measure the distance of 10 miles in just 1 year. Your hair is also a lot stronger than you think. A single strand can hold 3 ounces, which is the weight of an apple. If we combine the strength of all the hair on your head, it could support the weight of 2 elephants. Hey, let's try it. The beating sound your heart makes is the clap of valve leaflets opening and closing. Your heart doesn't replicate itself unless you have an injury. Your corneas are the only part of your body that don't get blood. They get oxygen directly through the air. When you're sitting or standing upright, it's easier for you to recall some positive memories that make you feel good. Some believe it's because sitting up with your back flat boosts blood flow and your brain gets more oxygen, which helps it function better. The man who has the deepest voice in the world, and that's definitely not me, can produce sounds that humans, including him, can't hear at all. But elephants can hear those sounds. Veins look blue because light has to go through layers of skin and fat to reach them. Your skin scatters a lot of the red portion of white light before it reflects the blood. This leaves only the blue light to bounce back to your eyes. A person who has anosmia is unable to detect smells. Phantosmia is the opposite condition, when someone smells an odor that isn't actually there. The human brain has 100 billion neurons. It's 73% water, and the same is true about the heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of its liquid, you start to feel tired. It also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. The earliest known person to have had blue eyes lived in the Stone Age, 7,000 years ago. Your right kidney is probably smaller and sits lower down than your left kidney to make room for your liver. By the way, your brain makes sure you don't drink too little or too much water. After you swallow some liquid, your mouth and throat start to fire signals to your brain, telling it to stop drinking. Otherwise, you'd keep gulping down water for the entire 10 to 60 minutes it takes the liquid to get to your cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and your brain will already process this image. The average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Even though the tongue isn't the strongest muscle in your body, it never gets tired. That's because of the way it's built. It's made up of 8 interwoven muscles. The tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. There are around 700 different species of bacteria in your mouth. Over 6 billion of them live there. Your skin is your largest organ. It can cover the surface area of 2 bath towels. It accounts for around 16% of body weight and is around 22 square feet. If you typed 60 words per minute for 8 hours a day, it would take you 50 years to type the human genome. You get tired pretty quickly when you're out in the heat. This happens because your body is trying really hard to keep itself cool, which puts a lot of extra work on it. So you get exhausted and tired, even if you don't do anything physically demanding. Your body has 78 organs, but only 5 of them are essential for survival: the brain, liver, kidney, lungs, and heart. Oh, the phone's ringing. Must be something urgent. At 11 p.m. Only all the gadgets in the house are silent. It's your ears that are ringing. You can also hear some hissing, whistling, buzzing, and even roaring. But all this noise doesn't have an external source. That's why it's known as phantom sounds. They can occur in one or both ears, constantly or from time to time. They're usually most noticeable at night, when nothing distracts you. Women have more taste buds on the surface of their tongues than men do. That's one of the reasons why 35% of ladies and only 15% of guys are super tasters. Those are people who feel flavors more strongly than others. Left-handed people usually prefer to chew on the left side, and right-handed people, well, you guessed it, chew on the right. Even if your fingerprints are damaged, they'll grow back in the same unique pattern. When breathing, a single lung only uses 5% of the oxygen you've inhaled.
You have as much hair as a monkey. Now, I don't mean to be insulting, but your fingerprints are not unique. You can hear better after you cover your ears. Now, can these statements be true, or are they nothing but myths? When a person is lying, their own nose can give them away. Can it be true? Yep. Researchers from the University of Granada have discovered that when a person tells a lie, the temperature around their nose and in the inner corners of their eyes rises. This phenomenon got named the Pinocchio effect. Hey, how about this one? People can have as many hairs on their body as chimpanzees. Can you believe this? Surprisingly, this one's true too. The hair count of a person and a chimp, or any other ape of our size, is approximately the same. The only difference is that human body hair is quite fine and often colorless. This makes it hard to see the sheer number of hairs. Your lungs are identical. It sounds reasonable, but is it true? Well, it's nothing but a myth. Your left lung consists of 2 lobes, while your right lung is divided into 3 parts. Plus, the lung on the left is a bit smaller. It has to make room for your heart. By the way, your lungs also contain around 1,500 miles of airways. It's more than half the distance between New York and Los Angeles. There are also more than 300 million alveoli, tiny balloon-shaped air sacs in your lungs. I bet you've heard this one before. Carrots can make your eyesight better. True or myth? Unfortunately, this idea isn't true. Neither can carrots get you better nighttime vision. Carrots are indeed packed with vitamin A. It benefits your body and protects your eyes. But even these veggies can't save you from wearing glasses if you need them. Some people sneeze when looking at the sun. Now, do they? Yes, that's true. About 25% of people have an interesting reaction to sunlight. They sneeze. This phenomenon even has its own name, the photic sneeze reflex. Ooh. Shaving body hair makes it grow darker and thicker. Is it the truth? Don't worry, that's just a myth. It might look as if your body hair has changed in thickness, rate of growth, or even color after getting shaved. But it's just an illusion. Shaving makes the tips of hair follicles blunt. That's why they look rougher and darker than usual. But once your hair grows in again, it'll start to look the same as it did before you shaved it. You have unique fingerprints. Ah, this one must be true, right? The problem with this statement is that scientists can't prove that each set of fingerprints is absolutely unique. It does seem to people, but it's impossible to check. And while this is improbable, people with identical fingerprints can actually turn out to be real. People have more than 5 senses. Is it an appealing myth or reality? There are 5 most obvious senses: vision, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. But how about thermoception, the sense of heat? Nociception, the perception of pain, or the perception of your body awareness? Proprioception, close your eyes and touch your nose. Got it? That's proprioception in action. This list can be much longer. Some experts state people have from 21 to 53 senses. Your fingers actually get pruny after you spend too much time in the water for your safety. Is it true? What's your bet? Scientists believe so, but first things first, pruny fingers are caused by narrowing blood vessels. When you stay in the water for a long time, your nervous system makes your blood vessels shrink. Your body sends the blood away from that area, and this loss of blood makes your vessels thinner. The skin starts folding over them, forming those funny wrinkles. Scientists aren't 100% sure, but they think this process occurs to help you have a better grip when your hands and feet are wet. People only use 10% of their brains. Oh, how I wish it was just a myth. And it is. Apparently, you use almost 100% of your brain every day. This organ is active all the time, even when you're asleep. When you're snoozing, your frontal cortex, which is responsible for higher-level thinking, and the areas that help you sense your surrounding, are still doing their job. For some people, the world is much brighter than for others. How come? That's actually true. There are 3 kinds of cone cells in the average person's eyes. These cones help to recognize the colors in the blue, red, and green spectrums. Thanks to them, most people can distinguish around 1 million different shades. But those with technochromacy have 4 cones in their eyes. This feature allows them to see up to 100 million different hues. This vision anomaly is extremely rare, and women have it more often than men. But do you know the funniest thing about this? Most people with tetrachromacy don't even realize they see the world brighter than others. Sometimes you can hear better after closing your ears. Well, it seems counterproductive, but can it be true? Indeed, if you're in a loud place, for example, in a club or at a concert, you should close your ears to hear your friends better. Push the tragus, which is the pointy skin-covered cartilage in front of your ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. Voila! You can prevent yourself from sneezing. Oh, that would be very convenient, but maybe it's just a myth. It's true. If you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. It immediately puts the brakes on all other processes, including the sneezing reflex. Okay, you're gonna finish these 5 episodes of your favorite series now and catch up on sleep later, but can you? Unfortunately, no. You can try to catch up on sleep at the weekend or take lots of afternoon naps during the week, but it won't help. Your body doesn't work this way. If you didn't have enough sleep the night before or went to bed really late, sleeping until noon won't save the day. Even worse, too much sleep will make you feel groggy. Some people have more ribs than others. Is it a myth? Nah, it's true. Most people have 12 pairs of ribs, which makes 24 in total. But 1 in 200 people has an additional 25th rib. It's called cervical and forms at the base of the neck above the collarbone. It can grow on the left, right, or even both sides of the body. Those people who have extra ribs most likely know nothing about this modification. That's because an extra rib rarely forms completely and can look like a thin strand of tissue. In this case, you won't see it even on an X-ray. You should wait for at least a half an hour after eating before you go swimming. Well, it sounds reasonable, but is it true? That's just a myth. The general idea behind this claim is that eating a large meal makes your blood flow towards your stomach to help with the digestion process. At the same time, your muscles don't get enough blood, which leads to cramps. But in reality, swimming right after having eaten something isn't dangerous at all. Your blood doesn't get diverted enough for it to cause any serious problems. Some people's snores can get louder than a working kitchen appliance. What do you think about this? Well, on average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels, which is as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes, the noise level can reach 80 decibels, and that's as loud as a working food blender. Not all people have round pupils. Can it be true? Yup. 2 people out of every 10,000 have an unusually shaped pupil. Most commonly, it resembles a keyhole. This eye disorder is called coloboma. Interestingly, some people with this condition don't have any problems with their vision. The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Nah, somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, a lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all four of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tale. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, a future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already. Yep, your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it is thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that lack of gravity prevents this, which is why fluid accumulates in the brain and skull. While a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you, there are people with cacosmia who would beg to differ. They perceive all the smells out there as something odorous. Well, that stinks. Speaking of which, out of all the senses we have, smell is the most acute one. We remember 65% of smells after a year, but only 50% of what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because the nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. We don't smell when we sleep. Well, of course, unless you haven't bathed in a while. Your sense of smell goes to sleep when you do, which is why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we rely only on sound because the sleep can be disrupted by noise. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. So maybe you will finally start eating those broccoli. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older as well. As for taste again, we mostly rely on our smell since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without the sense of smell, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. Now, when you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour, so mind the speed limit. Hiccups is a two-step process. First, you draw in a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then bang! The airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes outside. We need ears, not only for hearing but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors helping you keep the balance. By the way, ears have bones. These are also the only bones that never grow. We can hear thanks to these little guys since they transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them oscular chain, and it's made up of malleus, incus, and stapes, nicknamed hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which are integral parts of the middle ear. Our ears keep growing throughout our lives. They sweat too, and earwax is actually a kind of sweat they produce. Oh, by the way, the nose never stops growing either, perhaps from all the lies. Your heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. All the bones in our body are connected to each other except for the hyoid, which doesn't articulate with the other bones. This bone serves as support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the capillaries in your retina, creating that effect. As for eyes, the coolest camera so far has 200 megapixels. The human eye has 576. That's why sunsets are so much better in real life than in photos. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel like your stomach's falling down, it's really flipping inside your body. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. They are 100 times as sensitive as the tips of the fingers. Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints are. They also remain unchanged throughout our life. Oh, the tongue print is unique too, by the way. Even though all the people on Earth have an absolutely unique smell, identical twins smell exactly the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan for hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. In your body, you carry enough bacteria to fill a can. Bacteria makes about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of your total weight. Still, most of them are the waste that our body has. A human being has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Seems impressive, right? Well, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quantity. Anyway, cornflakes 1, humans 0. We consist of many chemical elements, including iron. The iron in our bodies is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon that we have can be used for 900 pencils. Our feathers can be used to make quill pens. Wait, that's birds. Never mind. Our liver has a superpower of regenerating if part of it was removed. It can grow back to the size that your body needs. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Such vitamins as A, D, K, and E can be properly absorbed only when fat dissolved. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Don't try this at home. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to turn an electric bulb on. It has 10 watts of power. What's that about? Our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can be also found in the soil of Japan and even in polar ice caps. Our bodies actually glow. Anyway, we can't see that with an unaided eye because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. Speaking of which, carmine used blushes and lipsticks is red dye made up of ground-up beetles. Oh. Saliva helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive it only when it's dissolved by saliva. An eyelash is here to stay for 150 days only. The world eyelash record was about 3 inches long. They're also home for tiny mites. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. Could be cool if we were given a cent every time we blink. We could make more than $100 daily. It may sound crazy, but our bones are stronger than lots of building materials. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. The only thing that makes our blood type different is sugar. AB and AB types have sugars, while O has none, which makes it perfect for donors. No sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than the other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Like what? Mu positive and Mu negative? Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. They grow almost 4 times slower because they have less damage than fingernails. Even though we stumble on them often, sudden circulation bursts usually don't last long. Nails don't only help us catch random tiny objects and peel the stickers off. If you didn't have a rigid structure against which to press, you wouldn't be able to judge how firmly to hold anything. Very few people can actually digest milk. The thing is, there's some special enzyme, let's call it a little helper, that breaks down the sugars any milk has. When people grow up, they run out of this enzyme. This sugar's called lactose, so adults that can't digest it are lactose intolerant. 68% of the world's population can't actually digest milk. If you're sleeping, it doesn't mean your whole body rests. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. Humans can't multitask. Really? We need time to switch from one task to another, but if we try to tackle several things at the same time, it's not going to be very productive. Try this one. Lift your right foot and start rotating it in a clockwise direction. Try to write the number 6 with your big toe in the air. Now, check the direction your foot's moving. It's moving in the opposite direction because to write the number 6, you need to make a counterclockwise movement. It actually takes a bit longer to start a new habit. It's not 100% true that 18 or 21 days are enough, as many people think. The process of getting a new habit can take up to 254 days, but on average, it takes around 66 days for a new habit to become automatic.
Your dog doesn't actually have a stronger sense of smell than you do. People often talk about how dogs have a superior sense of smell, and this probably started when a researcher from the 19th century, Paul Broca, marked humans as non-smellers. No one ever provided sensory testing to support this theory, but people still believed in it for a long time. The truth is, different types of animals can identify different kinds of scents. There was an experiment done where human volunteers needed to track a scent. Researchers dipped twine in chocolate essence and then zigzagged it all across a grassy field. Volunteers weren't allowed to use other senses. For example, they were ear-muffed and blindfolded. They even wore thick gloves and knee pads. The conclusion they came to is that while we are not as effective as dogs, we can follow a scent trail and become way better if we practice. Interestingly, humans are more sensitive to certain smells compared to dogs, like fruit or flowers. This is because the evolution of dogs didn't require them to sharpen their sense of smell for these types of odors. A TV screen won't ruin your eyesight. At least, there's no evidence that looking at a TV screen can really hurt your eyes. It's the same for phone or computer screens. Looking at them may lead to eye strain or fatigue, but in most cases, it's nothing you can't ease with proper rest. That doesn't mean watching TV or staring at your phone for too long doesn't have negative consequences in other parts of your life, like reduced concentration and lack of socialization, among many other things. Being able to roll your tongue is not really a genetic trait, even though biology teachers often say this gift is based on a dominant gene. There was a study that showed 7 out of 33 twins who didn't actually share this feature. Identical twins share the same genes, which implies that they should share this trait too. But they don't, which means genes are most likely not the factor that decides if you'll be able to roll your tongue. And this myth still exists, even though it was debunked over 6 decades ago. You're going to catch a cold if you go outside with wet hair is yet another myth. To actually catch a cold, we need to have a virus inside of our body. Also, wet hair is not something that makes you more attractive to the various germs lurking around you. People mostly believe this is true because they A. heard it from their parents, and B. associate going outside with your hair being wet with getting sick because you're generally more exposed to germs when you're outside. There are no truly double-jointed people. Some individuals have certain parts of their bodies that are very flexible, so they can, for example, touch their chin with their elbow or bend their fingers backward. We often call these people double-jointed, like the secret is in them having an extra hinge somewhere. Well, it's not true. They have single joints, but they may have bones with oddly shaped ends, or their connective tissue may be very pliable. It seems the appendix, as in the organ, is useful after all, despite its poor reputation as a useless intestinal tube that pretty much goes nowhere. It seems the appendix is actually a reservoir for bacteria, but a good and helpful one. It stores microbes that assist our body when it's fighting certain problems and illnesses. In the early stage of our life, the appendix also helped us with the process of forming white blood cells, together with certain types of antibodies. Hey, do you know where the stomach is? Sounds easy, right? But it's probably not where you think. Most people believe it lurks somewhere in the area behind the belly button. In reality, it's a bit higher in the abdomen, sitting on top of the rest of the gut. Here's how you can find it. Look for the point where your lower ribs meet in the middle. Now go down approximately 3 finger widths, and then 3 to your left. Now you're supposed to be right over the center of your stomach. You don't have taste sections on your tongue. The tongue map probably showed up at the beginning of the 20th century because scientists found minute differences in how strong a taste had to be in different areas inside the human mouth to actually register. This study created a myth that each part of the tongue was responsible for different tastes. In reality, all types of taste buds are spread across all areas of your mouth, and they can detect each taste. This includes umami too, which is now accepted along with the usual 4: sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. We don't only use 10% of our brain. We use way more, even when we're sleeping. Scientists tested this statement, and one of the methods they used was measuring activity in the brain while a person was performing various tasks. Results have shown we use most of our brain most of the time. The exact percentage varies from person to person, depending on what they're doing. Plus, it's not possible to monitor every single one of our brain cells. There are billions of them after all, so you can't know the exact number of active ones at any given time. When asleep, your frontal cortex, the part responsible for, let's say, higher level thinking, and certain areas that help you sense your surroundings are still working. Humans don't just have 5 senses: hearing, taste, touch, sight, and smell. This idea originated from Aristotle, a famous Greek philosopher, who said that there was a sense organ for every sense: eyes for seeing, a tongue for tasting, and so on. But that was thousands of years ago, and he was missing the vestibular system, a key sense organ. The vestibular system is the apparatus of the inner ear that our body uses to stay in balance. Not every sense requires its own sense organ, just a different type of sensory receptor. For example, your skin alone has 4 different receptors for temperature, touch, pain, and proprioception. Proprioception is body awareness, which means that even if you move your arm behind your back, you still know it's there. Something an octopus, for example, doesn't know. So, saying we have 33 senses could be closer to the truth, not 5. These include senses of balance, temperature, thirst, and many more we need to survive. If you like cracking your knuckles from time to time, no need to worry. The whole idea that it increases risks for potential knuckle problems perhaps makes sense in the first place because that's what happens when you constantly put pressure on your joints over the years. The satisfying sound you hear happens because of bubbles bursting in the fluid that actually lubricates your joints, called synovial fluid. If you eat a big meal, you can still go swimming. You won't get cramps. The idea behind this misconception is eating a heavy meal will increase the amount of blood flow to your stomach. That way, blood won't go to your muscles, which will potentially cause cramps if you go swimming. The truth is, you probably won't feel that comfortable swimming immediately after eating a large meal, but you're safe to go if you really want to. It's even recommended to have a small snack that's rich in carbs not long before your swimming session. This will boost your energy. When you shave your body hair, you don't have to worry about it growing back darker and thicker, because this is a myth. You may believe there are some changes in the color, thickness, or growth rate of the hair. That's because after you shave, you give the follicle a blunt tip, which may look or feel darker and rougher than it was before. But that's just a perception trick. You'll see that once your hair grows in again, it will be the same as before. It's a myth that we lose a disproportionate amount of body heat through our heads. You may feel like that because our head, chest, and face are definitely more sensitive when it comes to changes in temperature. In reality, you'd be just as cold if you went out without a hat as if you weren't wearing pants. You probably feel like you're losing heat through your head because it's often one of those parts that we leave uncovered when going out. No need to worry if you wake up a sleepwalker. You're not going to seriously harm them by doing so. If you startle one, they can be quite disoriented and may have a confused reaction. Sometimes it's better to do that than to let a sleepwalker get up and start doing certain things that they shouldn't be doing while sleeping, like cooking or driving. Or you could just show them the way back to bed.
Seems a little weird, but very few people can actually digest milk. The thing is, there's some special enzyme, let's call it a little helper, that breaks down the sugars any milk has. When people grow up, they run out of this enzyme, and only a little over 30% of all people retain some of it. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. A mere byte is 8 bits. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some info, but sooner or later you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from the list. Working memory is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, navigating in the city, and even trying to copy the moves from a workout video. If you wear a hat, it actually warms your hands and even feet. With a hat, the heat is basically trapped inside, and it circulates all over your body, including toes. Finally, good news! Fingernails grow faster than toenails. So you can officially cut the toenails a bit less often. I don't really like to bend to take care of those claws on my feet. If you're sleeping, it doesn't mean that your whole body rests. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. Humans can't multitask. It's true. We need time to switch from one task to another. But if we try to tackle several things at the same time, it's not going to be very productive. Now, you're most likely to be unable to isolate your ring finger. Every time you move your pinky or the middle finger, you'll move the ring finger too. The ability to isolate it is hereditary. When you stretch out your arms, the distance between the tips of your fingers is almost equal to your height. Now, it's not true that people can't touch the nose with their tongue. This superpower is called the Gorlin sign, and about 10% worldwide can perform it. Try this one. Lift your right foot and start rotating it in a counterclockwise direction. Try to write the number 6 with your big toe in the air. Now, check the direction your foot's moving. It's moving in the opposite direction because to write the number 6, you need to make a counterclockwise movement. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backwards. looks super unusual, and very few people can do that. Still, it's totally okay. It doesn't hurt to bend a thumb this way either. Hey, next time you're talking to a friend, try to breathe in through your nose. Don't pause to inhale, try to do it in the middle of a sentence while speaking. That can be rather tough. Only about 1% can do that, and they're usually musicians. Our brain is actually pretty large, almost as large as a pillowcase. It's squeezed into a relatively small head just because it's very wrinkly. If you could spread it out, you'd see how brainy you really are. We're made of teeny tiny cells. To see just how small those cells are, imagine that 10,000 of them could fit easily on the head of a pin. You could literally glow at night. Many fish, algae, and fungi are bioluminescent, and so are you. Turns out that human beings can emit light. Nope, your friends aren't going to ever see that without special tools, so you can't really brag. It actually takes a bit longer to start a new habit. It's not 100% true that 18 or 21 days are enough as many people think. The process of getting a new habit can take up to 254 days. But on average, it takes around 66 days for a new habit to become automatic. If you want to become a tiny bit happier, try spending some money on others. People are social creatures, and we used to need others' help to survive. Our brain developed a reward system. When we do something positive for others, we get oxytocin, one of the happiness hormones. Now, when you're asleep, you won't smell anything nasty. The thing is that your sense of smell deactivates at night. If there's some really terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. A recent research showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Tomatoes have more genes than humans. This shouldn't concern you though, because it's not the number of genes that matters, but the complexities of their connections. Fingernails don't only help us catch random tiny objects and peel the stickers off. If you didn't have a rigid structure against which to press, you wouldn't be able to judge how firmly to hold anything. Now your toes are the humble helpers that carry about 40% of your weight. If you've ever heard that humans don't really need their toes, don't believe it. They're also the main pushers when you walk. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within about 100 milliseconds. That's not more than 0.1 second. If you find hairs in the bath after having a shower, it doesn't mean you're going bald. This is normal, because an average person sheds 40 to 150 hairs per day. Baldness becomes noticeable after you've lost more than 50,000 hairs. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these 3. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. All the hair you see on your head is only about 10 to 15% of all the hair you've got. This hair is in its resting phase, and it either doesn't grow or sheds. 80 to 90% are actually growing at any given time. Retinal scanning is more reliable than fingerprint scanning. The fingers have about 40 unique characteristics, and the eye has 256. We feel about 80% of the taste of any food, thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. You might have a chocolate bar or smoked fish in your mouth. There will be no difference for you. Your nose doesn't just help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air from dirt. Hey, where do you think boogers come from? The human eye has some resemblance with a car engine. They both need various liquids to work properly. An engine needs oil lubrication, and an eye needs tears. In order to work well, the tears should be thoroughly distributed all over the eye. That's why we blink up to 20,000 times a day. So, an eyelid is a bit like a windshield washer. We can accidentally digest small objects, such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. See you later! We can digest plastic in case of emergency and in tiny quantities, but the human digestive system can't really bear grass. Grazing animals have special teeth and several stomach sections to process raw leaves and grass. Well, we have none of that equipment. That's why we have cows. Ever wondered why you feel so sleepy after lunch? Well, that's because your circadian rhythms, which have 24-hour cycles, demand you have a nap after 7 hours of being awake, and food just adds to this effect. When you crave a snack, it's your brain sending you a signal that you're lacking some vitamins or minerals. You probably don't want candy as bad as you think you do, so just have a couple of nuts instead. No, not me. Yep, I think it's safe to say that falling from any height can be really dangerous, but especially when you've tumbled out of an airplane, and worse, without a parachute. Now, the trick here is to create drag to slow your descent. Use your shirt, pants, or do an air snow angel. Anything to slow you down a little bit. But hey, you've always wanted to make an impact, right? Well, check this out. A Yugoslavian woman was working as a flight attendant. She survived an incredible fall on January 26, 1972, after the plane she was working on exploded. Falling from a height of 33,000 feet, she managed to survive but spent the next year and a half recovering after waking up from her coma. Experts disagree on the right way to land, but there's definitely a wrong way, landing on your head. Do you remember the rule of 3 for us squishy human beings? That's you and me, by the way. 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. It's a great guideline, but some people manage to stretch it out a bit further. If watching a sunset, smelling flowers, or ordering that big juicy hamburger is important to you, well, you'd better start thanking that delightful gas, oxygen. Don't believe me? Try doing even one of those things without it. 2 minutes without oxygen will cause the average human to pass out. After 10 minutes, well, there isn't usually a comeback to her. This varies, of course, from person to person, depending on their fitness levels, but we love to push the boundaries as humans, don't we? The longest someone held their breath for was an outstanding 24 minutes 3.45 seconds, give or take. That's 100 times longer than the first airplane flight. Take that, Wright brothers. Alex Segura Vendrell from Spain pushed the limits of breath holding in 2016 by floating in a controlled pool environment. Just before going under, he was gulping in air like a fish to try to get as much oxygen as possible. Strangely, holding your breath underwater is easier than trying it on dry land. Swimming activates your diver's reflex, slowing down our heart rate and metabolism. Not only is oxygen important, so is precious H2O and tasty food. Each cell in our body needs water to survive. If we can't replace the water lost quickly, we only have about 3 days to a week before it's all over. How humid the air is, our age, physical activity, and health play a huge part in water retention in our bodies. When we're running low on water, the important areas of our body, like the heart and brain, pull water from wherever it can. Like a sponge, these organs soak up everything until there's nothing left. In 1979, an Austrian man in a holding cell lasted 18 days without water. He allegedly licked condensation off the prison walls to stay hydrated. What's the scariest thing in the universe? The fridge is empty! Where's all the food? Without any calories, your body starts to feed on itself. Not exactly the diet I had planned for this year. During the first few days, our carbohydrate reserves are turned into glucose. When that's all used up, our body starts to target fat, muscle, and other proteins, all the way down to the bones. Fasting is a common way to let our bodies use those extra reserves inside of us. Mahatma Gandhi's longest of many fasts lasted 21 days. The longest known fast was when a 27-year-old lived off water and vitamin supplements for 382 days and shrank from 456 to 180 pounds. Yow! Our bodies are equipped to survive without food for long periods. Our ancestors didn't exactly have a supermarket to go to. This makes us pretty good at dealing with starvation. We humans can cope with many extreme survival situations. But how long can you swim in freezing water without turning into a popsicle? What happens if you're stuck in the desert or at the top of a mountain? Climbing the peaks of the world, like the Rocky Mountains, the Swiss Alps, or even Mount Everest, is challenging on a good day, but the real danger is altitude sickness. It affects about half of all climbers. Starting at roughly 1.5 miles up, the lack of oxygen can cause dizziness, tiredness, and headaches for some. Others can even get insomnia. This is just the start of a whole bunch of symptoms that affect our bodies. Consciousness becomes a big problem for most people at 3 miles up without proper preparation. Ascending too quickly can even lead to fluid in your lungs or even worse. The thing about altitude sickness is that it doesn't care if you're old or young, male or female, a couch potato or an athlete. Everest is 5.5 miles high and the ultimate challenge for climbers. It's like hiking up 20 Empire State Buildings or 2 times the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Austrian Felix Baumgartner pushed the altitude tolerance limit on October 14, 2012. He jumped from 128,000 feet up. That's nearly 24 miles. It's no surprise that he's also the first skydiver to go faster than the speed of sound, reaching a mind-boggling 833 miles per hour. He definitely had the right equipment, like a pressure suit with oxygen and safety checks in place, which goes to show you, if you're going up high, remember the 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Surviving extreme heat isn't just about the temperature. Humidity is the real danger to us. The less humid the air is, the more water stays where it belongs, in our body. Ever walked into the sauna and realized that it's over 230 degrees? That's so hot and humid, you'd probably only last about 3 to 4 minutes max. Wait, humans can't melt, right? Above 104 degrees, there's a real chance of heat stroke. It doesn't sound like a big change from our usual body temperature, but it is. Just imagine getting caught in a desert for a few days. And not just any desert, the world's hottest. The hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth was in Nevada, a crazy 134 degrees. Cooling way down really quickly can help relieve cramps, headaches, and even nausea. But breathing can become kinda impossible once your organs start to shut down and hypothermia sets in. As soon as our bodies drop below our natural body temperature, our muscles start to stiffen. That's why you stop feeling cold and pain after a while. There just aren't any nerve endings functioning anymore. Shivering quickly to produce heat is our body's natural way to keep our organs warm. This only works for cold air though. In cold water, shivering drains your body heat even faster. If you've never heard of the 300 Club, you're not alone. A base in Antarctica has found a great way to test the extreme limits of the human body in the most peculiar way. Participants at the station warm up in the sauna, which is heated to 200 degrees. Then they pull on their boots and run outside, where it's minus 100. Not only do they have to endure the 300-degree temperature change, but they've also got to run around the South Pole before coming back to the sauna to warm up again. Oh, am I tired? Time for a little snooze. Sleep is very important. Maybe that's why getting out of bed in the morning is so tough. We need sleep to recharge our body from the long day we've just had, leaving us refreshed and alert when we hear that alarm. Our brain can turn all fuzzy without enough sleep, and a good 8 hours is perfect for a healthy immune system. Sleeping improves our memory, our heart, and puts us in a better mood for the day. Randy Gardner and his friends tried to test the limits of staying awake. It was for their science fair project. They managed to stay awake and functioning for 11 days and 25 minutes. Even when tested during and after the experiment, Randy could play basketball and had no abnormal brainwaves. Now, it's almost impossible to calculate the exact G-force that would harm a human. That's because there are 3 types of G-force out there: side to side, up and down, and forward and backward. The danger lies in how long we have to sit there while we're being thrown around like a rag doll. The longer we sit there, the more it affects our bodies. We experience G-force at home simply by sitting down on the couch too quickly, sneezing, or having someone slap our back a little too hard. Pilot John Stapp demonstrated that a human can withstand over 40 Gs. That's nearly 10 times the amount an average racing driver feels. The experiment only went on for a few seconds, but for an instant, his body weighed almost 7,000 pounds. Survival isn't always about taking on the elements. Sometimes it's fighting against time. The current record for the longest living human is Gene Kalman, who was born in 1875. So, when a woman is pregnant, her brain goes through many changes that prepare her for childbirth. And the part of her brain that's responsible for social signals decreases. This causes the brain to be more efficient at taking care of the baby. But don't worry, it doesn't stay that way. It returns to its standard size after the pregnancy. In a day, your body produces 2 pints of saliva. That's around 80 gallons a year. And in one lifetime, yes, you can fill 2 Olympic pools with spit. Imagine swimming in one. That's disturbing and disgusting at the same time. Humans have one secret superpower hidden in our stomachs, our stomach acid. It has a pH of around 1, and it is one of the most acidic substances in the world. It's so powerful that it can dissolve metals, and the stomach must develop special protective mucus to prevent your whole body from dissolving. But don't try to eat metals, they can be toxic. If you take a big breath, your left lung will be filled with much less air than your right one because it's smaller. Your heart takes up quite a bit of space, so the left lung has to make room for it. The lungs are divided into lobes. The right has 3, and the left lung has only 2 lobes. Your lungs aren't the only organs that are not proportional in size. Your kidneys are also a bit different. The left one is typically a bit larger than the right one. If you've ever wondered how big they are, your kidneys are the size of your fist. Everyone knows that sharks have strong teeth, but the outer layer of our teeth, called enamel, is as strong as the one covering sharks' teeth. The enamel is also the strongest substance in the body. It protects our teeth from all kinds of damage, so you can eat your favorite food in peace, like pizza. Now, toenails grow twice as slowly as fingernails, or at half speed, whichever one you like. And if there was an Olympic sport determining which nail grows the fastest, well, your pinky nail would always come in last because it is the slowest growing nail out of them all. The reason for this is that some fingers aren't used as much as others and don't have as much blood supply. There are weird animals like shrimp and crabs that drop their skeletons in order to grow. Don't be shocked to learn that we do the same thing. Now, we don't literally drop our skeleton, of course, but we slowly regenerate a new one every 10 years. So, in our whole life, we will change our skeleton around 8 times. Many years ago, we were reptiles like the evil lizard from Spider-Man. Luckily, we've evolved and lost almost all of our reptile features except the 3rd vestigial eyelid, which is partially visible at the end of your eye close to your nose. Reptiles still have this. It is used to protect and clean the eye. If you have polychoria, your eye can develop more than one pupil. Sadly, this won't improve your vision. It can make it worse, in fact, but in most cases, it won't affect your vision much. This condition is super rare and typically starts in childhood, but it can also develop later in life. Dermatographia is a usually harmless condition that allows you to virtually write on your skin. People who have this condition don't need notebooks to keep notes. If you have this condition and you scratch your skin lightly, the redness can last for half an hour. This might be helpful at your next exam, if you know what I mean. Another unique condition that some people have is syndactyly, or webbed toes. This is when your toes are fused together. Nobody knows what causes this, but it's nothing serious. Did you know that your tongue is as unique as your fingerprints? Yeah, me neither. The tongue has special shapes and geometric figures, like fingerprints, that differ from person to person. Who knows? Maybe we'll unlock our phones by licking them in the future. Or not. A fully grown person is made up of around 7 octillion atoms. It sounds unreal, but it's true. That number is so big that I can't even say it in one breath. It's 7 followed by 27 zeros. Now, earwax looks like wax, feels like wax, and tastes like… Of course, I have no idea what it tastes like, and please don't try to find out. My point is, it's not actually wax. It's a combination of fat, skin cells, dirt, and sweat. It's important for the health of the ears because it helps keep them clean. Now, pound for pound, bones are much stronger than steel. The same density of bone will almost always outperform steel. But if you compare the same volume of bone and steel, the bone will break before the steel does. Bones are made to be light and strong. If they were made of steel, we'd be a lot heavier and would need much more energy to move. When you were born, you had more bones than you do now, because most of them have fused together. An adult person has 206 bones, while babies have 300 bones. Some of those bones are made of cartilage, which is flexible and soft. The strongest, heaviest, and longest bone is the femur. This bone is the most difficult to break. It can take up to 30 times your body weight, or around 6,000 pounds. Technically, you could balance 2 cars on your femur and still be fine. But don't try it. Bioluminescence is a talent some animals have, like angelfish, fireflies, lanternfish, and humans. Yep, you actually shine in the dark. Scientists have discovered that we glow, but the shine is 1,000 times weaker than what our eyes can detect. You can see yourself glow if you have an ultra-sensitive camera. The amount of melanin you have in your eyes determines what color they are. Brown eyes have the largest amount of melanin, and blue eyes have much less of it. However, people with heterochromia have different color eyes. One eye can be blue, and the other can be brown, or any other color, which is cool. Sometimes only half the eye can be a different color. Now, when you sneeze, the air exiting your nose and mouth can travel at almost 100 miles per hour. We sneeze because some irritants enter the nose, and the body sneezes to remove it. And if you've never heard about your eyes falling out if you sneeze without closing them, that's a lie. Nothing will happen. Your heart is the only muscle that works 24 hours, 7 days a week. It beats over 3 billion times in a person's life and pumps around 2,500 gallons of vital fluid daily. So, you should take good care of it because it works super hard, and you can't do without it. Your funny bone isn't actually a bone but a nerve. That's why when you hit it, you get the feeling that 1,000 ants are crawling under your skin. This nerve is quite long. It starts in the spine and ends in your pinky and ring fingers. Almost all of us have heard that our noses and ears never stop growing. Well, this is not really true. Our noses and ears stop growing when we become teenagers, but they do get bigger as we age because gravity is pulling them. So they're actually stretching, not growing. When you don't get enough sleep, the brain can literally start eating itself. 13% of neurons are destroyed when you don't get a good night's sleep. That's a lot of brain power to lose. Instead of finishing that episode of your favorite series, go to bed. It's not worth it. When you are well rested and have enough sleep, your brain can create enough electricity to power a light bulb, and your neurons can send more messages than all the phones in the world combined. They travel at around 150 miles an hour, and the signals carried by your motor neurons can travel twice as fast. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.